Hi everybody, it's your human anatomy and physiology teacher, Mr. Poser, and today we are continuing the digestive system unit by getting into two big parts of the digestive system here. The mouth, so we're going to talk about what happens to food in the mouth and what the structures there that allow food to go from the mouth to the rest of the alimentary canal, aka the GI tract, aka the digestive system. And then we're going to talk about the upper GI tract, including the esophagus and the epiglottis. All right, so that is what is in store for this video. In our last video, we went over the basics of the digestive system. What are the 5 main functions? What is the overview? What does the digestive system do? And some of the main points about like what its job is in maintaining homeostasis. All right, so as signaled by this creepy mouth with feet, although nice teeth, we're going to start talking about the mouth here, aka the oral cavity. And as I said in the last video, in fact, two of those main functions of the digestive system, mechanical and chemical digestion or chemical breakdown, both begin in the mouth. Okay, so both mechanical and chemical digestion both happen as soon as you put the food in your mouth. And in fact, well, you know, if you've ever seen something delicious and you start to salivate in response to seeing something delicious, like like dogs do that all the time, then really digestion begins even before the food enters your mouth. So there you have it. But there's two main parts to the roof of your mouth. It's called your palate. You have a hard palate and a soft palate, and the palate is it's generally referred to as the roof of your mouth. Or if you have a refined palate, you like nice foods and expensive stuff, like me. Just kidding. But the hard palate is bone. It's actually made of what's called the Palatine Bone, which we may or may not have studied in our skeletal system. We might have identified that as one of our skull bones. But anyway, the soft palate is made of skeletal muscle, and that skeletal muscle is responsible for, well, swallowing or deglutition, as we talked about in the last video, forcing what becomes of your food into, well, your esophagus and past your epiglottis so that it can go through the rest of the GI tract. The little dangly thing in the back of your mouth is called your uvula. Now you know, just in case a little kid asks, like, what is that? It's called your uvula. It's the end of the soft palate, and it closes off the nasopharynx, so the part of the pharynx that is shared between the respiratory tract and the GI tract. It closes that off when you swallow so that air doesn't get too much into the esophagus, and then another structure called the epiglottis is going to make sure that food doesn't get into the trachea. So you got a couple things that are making sure that food goes down the food hole and air goes down the air hole, so for lack of a better term. And your uvula helps to do that. So now you know, right? If you don't take anything else away from this video, you can remember that, hopefully. So the teeth and the tongue, which are obviously both in the mouth, are responsible for the mechanical breakdown of food. And the term for what your food becomes as it exits your mouth and enters your esophagus is called a bolus, which is another good word. I don't know if it's like just, I don't know. I like that word too, bolus. Sorry. Okay, but anyway, your teeth and your tongue, they move your food and they initiate swallowing, right, or deglutition to force that from the oral cavity down into your esophagus. Right, and that is a voluntary action. Swallowing requires skeletal muscle, but smooth muscle will take over from there in peristalsis, like we talked in our last video. And you have 3 pairs of salivary glands in your around your oral cavity. And your salivary glands, as you may have already guessed, they secrete saliva. And what does saliva actually do? Saliva is releasing enzymes that help to chemically break down food. So obviously, chewing with your teeth is mechanically breaking down your food into smaller pieces, and then your saliva, it's obviously going to, well, it's going to clean your mouth, it's going to dissolve food chemicals so that you can taste things with your tongue. It's going to moisten your food so that it can travel through the rest of the GI tract relatively easily, and it contains enzymes, particularly what we call salivary amylase, which is a enzyme that's going to start breaking down carbohydrates in particular. Okay, so your spit is a lot of water, true, but it's also containing a lot of different enzymes that break down different types of carbohydrates. So there you have it. Let's see. You have your parotid salivary glands, your sublingual at the front, and then you also have your submandibular pair of salivary glands. So you got 3 different ones all ready to go over there. Hey, let's talk about teeth. All right, so some of you may or may not be taking this class because you are interested in, say, like being an orthodontist or being a dentist or something like that. So I'm dedicating quite a few slides here to talking about teeth. So this video is for you, dentist people. Most adults have 32 teeth. Children typically begin with 20 deciduous teeth. Primary, or what we refer to as deciduous, not like the tree, deciduous teeth give way to adult teeth as the child matures. So everybody knows, maybe you remember when you lost your first tooth. And why do you lose your teeth and put them under your pillow when you're a little kid? Well, it's because those teeth, those deciduous teeth, are making room for your adult teeth, right? So other animals like sharks, they lose their teeth throughout their lifetime and they just keep growing them and replacing them. We get one set of replacements, which is, hopefully all we need. But yeah, you have your first pair or your first 20, and then you've got 32 adult teeth that erupt from your gums and replace the baby teeth, and including your wisdom teeth, which we will talk about, I think, in a second. But yeah, tooth structure. One individual tooth every tooth has the same basic structure to it. There's 3 parts of it. One's called the crown, which is the chewing surface, which is made of a substance called enamel, which your dentist may have told you about at some point in your life. But enamel is the hardest substance in the body. All right, so it's a specialized type of structure. It's not exactly like bone. Hey, a lot of people think, your teeth are bones, which they are kind of. They're not made up of the same calcium matrix as, your enamel is not made up of the same calcium matrix as the rest of your bones are. It's actually harder even. So the crown is made of enamel. What would that be? Deep to the crown is called the dentin, which is the living bone-like material found under the crown and in the roots. So this is the part that's more like bone. It's got like blood vessels and nerves and all that kind of stuff. Or I should say the pulp contains the nerves and the blood vessels. And the pulp runs from the roots and into the jaw. So here's a nice image. Here's the crown. Okay, it's called a crown because it's kind of like shaped like a crown a little bit. Just deep to that is the dentin. Like I said, it's the living bone-like material. It's got holes in it and that kind of stuff. And then here's the pulp where the blood vessels and nerves are. So I misspoke before and I apologize. But yeah, there you go. There's your periodontal ligament, and then there's the nerve and blood supply. But yeah, there you go. There's 3 main parts of your teeth. Okay, there's 3 different kinds of teeth, and I'm sure you may or may not have heard these before if you've ever listened to your dentist talk about them. You have incisors, you have canines, and you have molars. So let's talk about those 3. Okay, the first kind of tooth that we're going to talk about are the incisors. You have 8, and they're found in the front. So you got 4 up here, you got 4 right there, and they are shaped like chisels. They're using, well, the first teeth that encounter your food, like, all right? And it's used for biting into and tearing off pieces of food. And it kind of chisels away at it a little bit. So your teeth are a really, really nice example of how form follows function. The shapes of your teeth allow them to do a very specific job, just like everything else in biology. So like when I teach the main idea of biology, of the relationship between structure and function, a lot of times we talk about teeth. So it's just a little side note there. Your molars, what their job is, they have large flat surfaces that crush and grind food, and they are at the back of your mouth. You have 8 premolars, 4 up here, 4 down here, and 12 molars, 6 up here, 6 down there, including, I don't know if that includes your wisdom teeth, what are your wisdom teeth? Well, they're an extra pair of molars that comes in right around, they call them wisdom because they're about when you become an adult. But a lot of times they don't come in right, or they don't come in at the right angle, or they don't come in at all, or it's just cause a whole bunch of problems, and they are what we call vestigial structures, which means that, most of you, I'm guessing, who are going to be watching this video either are going to have your wisdom teeth taken out sometime soon, or you have already had your wisdom teeth taken out sometime soon. But anyway, molars have wide rounded cusps, and they're used to grind food. So you're going to find a lot more molars or molar-like teeth in animals like, say, deer and cows and that kind of stuff, because what do deer and cows usually eat? Well, they eat plants, right? And that's what the job of the molars is to do, is kind of break down like plant matter and that kind of stuff. Okay. And then finally, you have your canines. I'm gonna get rid of this GIF. It's creeping me out. Your canines. You have four pointed cone-shaped teeth next to the incisors, and they're used to tear or shred food. So your canines are right here. Right, if you had fangs, that's what those would be. So like in a cat or even a dog, they have very large canine teeth, and they stick down way more than the other kinds of teeth. Well, because cats and dogs are specialized for eating. Well, they're carnivores. They're specialized for eating meat. So that's why they have those huge canines, and we do too. Well, we are omnivores. So ours are much smaller in comparison. Evolution, people. All right, so then from there, we're going to get into a few things with the upper section of the GI tract, and we're going to start with the epiglottis. And we have talked about the epiglottis before in the respiratory system. The epiglottis is just a flap of cartilage. It is superior to the larynx and superior to the esophagus, and it's used to block the airway, the trachea, as swallowed material passes by. If you block that airway, obviously you could choke, and that's when you need the Heimlich. I don't know if the Heimlich is actually the thing to do anymore. But anyway, you choke, okay? Your food hole and your air hole are right next to each other, so there needs to be things to make sure that one doesn't go into the other and vice versa, right? And your epiglottis, it's right here. Its job is to kind of close whenever deglutition occurs or when swallowing occurs, so that the food that you're swallowing does not go into the trachea, and it goes into the esophagus. All right, which is our next topic here, the esophagus, the tube that extends from the pharynx to the stomach. And this is not like the trachea. The trachea is, well, obviously where air goes through and it leads to your lungs. The trachea is reinforced with hyaline cartilage, and it stays as a kind of rigid tube the whole time. The esophagus is not like that. The esophagus is very muscular. Why is it muscular? Well, it's because it's going to kind of squeeze, like peristalsis, what we talked about in our last video. It's going to squeeze food and liquid from the oral cavity all the way down to your stomach. And it's even going to do that, guys. It's even going to do that when you're hanging upside down. Not that I would recommend eating food upside down, but if you swallow something, peristalsis is going to take care of it and make sure that whatever goes into your mouth or whatever you swallow goes to your stomach, no matter what. It's going to fight against gravity, kind of like just using that peristalsis that's squeezing the tube of toothpaste to make sure it goes from one place to the next. The proper place from one place to the next, right? Not the other way, because that's not good. We'll talk about that, though. All right, so from there, we're going to get into the lower section of the GI tract, and we will start with that in our next video. So let me know if you have any questions, and we will see you next time.